This is video 9 of Metaphysics of Being. The area of a circle is an example of the inexactness of our perception of it. I wrote on the board here pi, which everybody knows is 3.14 basically, but that has a repeating decimal to it, and this goes on out into infinity. Pi shows up a lot in mathematics, and it's the fact that this is not an exact number is kind of interesting when you dig into it further. And I'll read on and we'll get into that. True absolute reality cannot be perceived through perceived reality. In the book here, we have perceived reality. This is what we view, and then there's some kind of actual reality out there, perceived and actual. We're seeing this limited view for some reason. One way to look at this, and I got this from a guy that was studying Friedrich Nietzsche, A Will to Power, that our view, if we're here viewing, we can always only see a limited part of it. If we are viewing this, we can only see this side and maybe a little bit here, and we don't see it in its totality. We don't see the infinite reality of anything. So that's kind of an interesting way to view that we are only perceiving this limited view of reality. Actual, in a God sense, would be able to view all of it in its entirety all at the same time, whereas we could only see it here, and then even if we went on this side, we'd only be able to see that little bit. We could never see reality in its entirety, in its totality. If you try to reconcile perceived reality upon actual reality, they will not line up. Imagine trying to put one circle exactly on top of another. No matter how hard you try, they could never line up with 100% perfection. They will be ever so slightly off. Given the fact that there will always be a slight difference, means that you will always be an infinite amount of reality from true absolute reality. Remember that within any amount of extension always exists an infinite amount of parts. Therefore, all the mind is ever left with is this perceived reality. Even if we could take all of this, our perception, and try to set this right on top of the actual totality of reality, we, due to our imperfections, would not be able to line that up. It would be ever so slightly off, and given that it would be that little bit off, it would be off by an infinite amount. Waves are actually composed of oscillating peaks and valleys which correspond to the dimension of a circle. Therefore, waves are as inexact as circles, considering the relationship to pi and the nature of its repeating decimal places. Moreover, whether we are considering a stationary object or a moving object, our perception of it is the same. We can never view its exact location. Pi comes up in mathematics a lot, and then in science, and also has a relationship to waves and circles. The more you get into trigonometry and so forth, a lot of the formulas would be associated with pi and so forth, related to figuring out diameters and circumference, and also waves, studying waves. You're using a formula that in itself is inexact. So not only is our perception inexact, but the mathematics that we've developed over the last 2,500 years, by its very nature, is inexact. If we attempt to view a polygon, we will not see its exact location, whether it has 3, 4, or more sides. We can view its imperfection, but never its Platonic perfection. This is due to Plato's belief that absolute forms and laws transcend our perceived reality. A polygon with an infinite amount of sides approaches a limit of being a circle. However, how is this different from our other numbers that approach a limit? Don't we say that if a number approaches a limit, that it is in effect that number? For example, if a number approaches 1 in an infinite regress, we would say that it is 1. Therefore, a polygon with an infinite number of sides is a circle using this logic. Going back to, there's a term called squaring the circle. Going back to Pythagorean and a lot of the early mathematicians 2,000-3,000 years ago, when they were going through this, they thought it would be perfect. They thought mathematics would be perfect, and just a lot of interesting paradoxes came up. One was they were trying to come up with what this number was, and they would try to create circles, but they would use straight lines, and they would almost have a circle, and it would be close, and they were coming close to getting this number, but they were ever so off. Every 50 years, every 100 years, it was just kind of amazing. And even to this day, I mean, that it's a continuous repeating decimal is just, it's not an exact number. It is impossible to identify the exact location of a number on a number line. If we say that something is a location 1, it is not exactly there or even really there at all without it being a part of an infinite amount of other locations. If we say that it is a dimensionless point, as Euclid stated, it is not there. If we say that it has any level of extension at all, to give it some existence, it explodes back to an infinite amount of locations within itself, since any amount of extension is infinite. This same argument can be made with respect to time as well. If we try to identify what time it is in an absolute sense from the beginning of time, it can't be done. All we are left with is this infinite approximation of our space-time location. It is, in a way, there and not there at the same time. If we look through a telescope, we can see billions of light years into the heavens. We actually see how that appeared billions of years in the past. It is a form of time travel. Oddly enough, anytime we view anything, we are always looking an infinite amount into the past, no matter how close it is to us. That's really an amazing thing. Again, anytime we give any extension, it contains an infinite amount of the quantity within itself. Therefore, it would seem that we are always living and experiencing infinitely into the past. So how do we ever experience the moment we are actually living in? The answer, we never fully do. If we're here perceiving, and we're always looking into the past, into times past, because there is extension here. And again, anytime there's extension between us perceiving and us, whatever we are perceiving out here, any extension here, there's an infinite amount of space-time units within that. We don't care about stuff like that in day-to-day reality, but metaphysically, the fact is, from that perspective, we are always living in the past. There are some things that don't exist. Nothing is encapsulated by everything. The remaining part outside of everything is nothing. We can speak of nothing since it is everything that is not everything. Yet by definition, There is no nothing, since it would have to be included within the set of everything. Therefore, nothing does not exist. Again, that's just a play on words, uh, paradox. We talk about nothing as if it's something, and um, there's just no way around it. Again, Anaxagoras believed that everything is in everything. Due to the relationship between zero, infinity, and one, it appears that no matter how one tries to limit reality, it seems to expand infinitely both externally and internally to the point that infinity overwhelms the finite at every level. There is no limit put on our reality. It cannot be contained. Its brilliance is preeminent even when not perceived at first glance. This is why Anaxagoras believed as he did. You cannot cut reality off from itself, no matter how hard you try. It is there and not there at all times. It is so brilliant and preeminent that it doesn't even need space-time. That space-time is just an attempt to limit it as well. George Berkeley believed that to be is to be perceived. This notion has borne out to be incredibly accurate and supported by the modern science of quantum mechanics. Our minds appear to take an infinite amount of possible realities of a wave function and collapse it into one actual real perceived reality. And I'll end that here, and then we'll get into more of the quantum mechanics next.